We're now certainly going to move on to another very important debate on the situation of Roma in Europe. As we speak about living together in dignity, it really is quite shameful to know that some 10 to 12 million of Roma in Europe continue to be victims of persistent discrimination, prejudice, aggression and unequal access to social rights and to public services. The Congress made the situation of the Roma one of the priorities for its actions this year, beginning with our first debate on the subject during our 20th session in March. Since then, we've prepared a report on the situation of Roma as a challenge for local and regional authorities, and we're going to debate that now. We convened a summit of mayors on Roma here in this hemicycle on the 22nd of September, and we'll hear the general rapporteur on the summit, Mr. FRESNO GARCIA, who will present the conclusions of that summit. We've also certainly organised this year the third edition of the Dosta Congress Prize for Municipalities, which will also be awarded today to those winners and recipients who are here with us. Before we begin our debate, I'd also like to say that I'm very pleased that again Mr. Schockenbroek is here with us. Jerome, you're always absolutely welcome here as the special representative for the Secretary General on Roma issues. I'm now going to give the floor to the thematic rapporteur on behalf of the Congress to report on the situation, and I'm going to call on Mr. John WARMISHAM as our rapporteur to address us, and John, you have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, last year some member states made headline news with their actions to expulse members of the Roma community. Earlier this year, dozens of mayors in the Czech Republic signed a petition declaring Roma as socially inadaptable. Just recently, we have witnessed special programmes for Roma in Hungary and violent anti-Roma demonstrations in Bulgaria, bringing home to us that the anti-Gypsyism, prejudice, discrimination and racist violence from which Roma have suffered for so long persists and continues. More than that, this situation is worsening, and local and regional authorities are the first to cope with the consequences. However, they are also the ones that can do something concrete to improve it, to reverse the trend, to make a change. The report which we are debating today is all about that, making a change in our communities at the grassroots level. Since the Roma arrived from India many centuries ago, they have been regarded as a problem in Europe. Over the years, different methods have been used to deal with this problem, from assimilation to containment, and as we know, tragically, to extermination during the Second World War. After the war, many Roma found themselves behind the Iron Curtain and were forcibly settled by the new communist countries. It wasn't until the 1990s that the rest of the world heard of them again, following a wave of discrimination and attacks against them in some of their new home states. In spite of the laws and mechanisms that have been put in place to ensure that the Roma's human rights are respected, the evidence is clear that today, in 21st century Europe, the 10 to 12 million Roma living in our communities are still being discriminated against. They are still being victims of hate speech and racist attacks. They are still facing social exclusion, and they are still being refused access to their basic human rights. Our colleague José Manuel of the Parliamentary Assembly wrote in his report on Roma last year about the attack on the home of a Roma family in one Council of Europe member state. Robert Kudrick and his family were seriously injured when Molotov cocktails were thrown into their house. The fire completely destroyed their home. Natalka, their 2-year-old daughter, went into a coma with serious burns covering 80% of her body. There would be a public outcry if this sort of attack happened in a well-to-do neighbourhood. But negative attitudes towards Roma are so strong that this sort of story would hardly raise an eyebrow. Not even the death of 4 children in a fire in a Roma camp earlier this year prompted a debate on shameful housing conditions in which many Roma are living. Following the events of last summer, the Secretary-General of the Council of Europe decided concrete action must be taken urgently to improve the inclusion of Roma in Europe. He called a high-level meeting of member states to discuss how to overcome the immediate and long-term challenges related to the rights and obligations of Roma communities throughout Europe. Speaking at the Congress session a week later, the Secretary-General said about local and regional authorities, and I quote, "You are at the forefront of the efforts to integrate Roma and Travellers. It is at the local level where most challenges are, but it is also at the local level where best practices have been found. We want to build on this precious work and experience and work with Congress in order to achieve the critical mass of positive change." It is in response to that call that Congress and its current Affairs Committee decided to address the situation of Roma in Europe and to see what we, local and regional authorities, can do for Roma inclusion. As elected representatives, we have a responsibility to protect and promote the rights of our citizens at the grassroots. We are the closest authorities to our compatriots, and we really are best placed for devising policies to facilitate Roma access to education, employment, housing and healthcare, and to help ensure their participation in society. We have a duty to take action to address these issues and to seek long-term solutions. In the resolution I am proposing to you today, I wanted to get the political message across. There is a lot that we, as local and regional councils, can do. We must work to combat the ignorance, the myths and the stereotypes amongst the non-Roma population, and to build mutual trust at the grassroots level by working together. We must raise awareness about Roma, their history, their culture. We must work to empower Roma to promote their participation. We must work in partnership with Roma on the implementation of our strategies and action plans. But most importantly, we must have a political will and a commitment to move forward, and we must show that our action is for the benefit of all residents, for the benefit of the community as a whole, bringing about a win-win situation. This was also the message of the Summit of Mayors on Roma, convened by the Congress on the 22nd of September this year here in Strasbourg, in which I had the privilege of participating. The summit was a great success, providing a chance for local and regional authorities and Roma communities to meet face to face, discuss problems on the ground and identify possible solutions. A concrete result of the summit is the commitment of elected representatives to pursue their work in favour of Roma and to establish a European alliance of citizen regions for Roma inclusion. A core group of 6 European citizen regions was set up already at the summit to prepare the establishment of this alliance. The resolution before you today will provide a frame and guidelines for action of this alliance of all local and regional authorities. I would like to use this opportunity to call on you, dear colleagues, on your municipalities and regions to come forward and join us in this new cooperation framework. I have also tabled a number of amendments to the draft resolution and recommendation to take account of the developments after it was approved by the committee, including the results of the summit, and I will present these amendments in due course. You will also see in my text that I speak of the obligations of the Roma community as well. We are all European citizens striving to achieve a democratic continent based on the rule of law, respect for human rights and cultural diversity, and we must all respect the rules of a democratic society. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, this resolution proves us with guidelines for action we can take to make a difference. I believe that by respecting the human rights of Roma, by combating their social exclusion, we can make a big contribution to that tolerant and civilised society, which is so important for the future of our continent, for the future of European democracy, which requires the inclusion and participation of all Europeans, including Roma. Ladies and gentlemen, I urge you to approve this resolution and recommend you and thank you, I really do thank you for your attention of listening to me on this important subject. Thank you.
And John, can we also thank you very much for the work that you've done on this issue. You really have worked very hard, and you and I know back home it's not a popular issue, certainly with some of our colleagues to take up. Many would just want to brush this issue under the carpet, and we are very grateful that you've taken this issue under your wing so seriously, and I thank you very much for that, and thank you very much for the introduction for the report. Now we're going to hear a statement from Mr. José Manuel FRESNO GARCIA, who is the General Rapporteur for the Summit of Mayors, which I also was very pleased to chair. Mr. FRESNO GARCIA gave us a brilliant overview of the summit in his report at the time, and I'm very much looking forward to his sharing with us now some of the main highlights and lessons learned from the event. Mr. FRESNO GARCIA has had a very experienced field here of working in social exclusion areas in Spain, also as a Spanish member of the Council of the European Commission Against Racism and Intolerance. He's been very active there, and is a senior expert on equality and Roma policies. He's currently head of the recently created Spanish Race and Ethnic Equality Council, and was a Director General of the Foundation for Roma way back from 1982, when he started in this area, to 2005, when he became Director of the Luis Vives Foundation, whose mission is to develop and empower the Spanish third sector in the social action arena. So we're absolutely delighted that you're able to be with us. Can I personally apologise as President, and I will have to leave the chamber for a short time, but now you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Congress of Local and Regional Authorities. There are today in Europe 12 million of Roma. Some of them, hopefully, enjoy good living conditions, but unfortunately, most of them suffer from discrimination and exclusion. And in fact, this discrimination is related to little education, to lack of employment, to very bad housing conditions, poor health, and discrimination in different areas. They suffer from discrimination and they lack of effective rights. And the challenge today in Europe is to give the Roma better opportunities for a proper life. In the summit, we hear different positive experiences and we hear positive proposals. And I will focus on the 4 main ideas coming from the summit and on a practical proposal. The first main idea concerns local responsibilities, rights, duties, and responsibilities. And we need to recall that the human rights are legally guaranteed to everybody in Europe, including Roma, under the European Convention of Human Rights and the European Social Charter. And we need to recall and to remember that local and regional governments are responsible for the protection of the rights and for fostering the well-being of all who live in their communities, irrespectively of their ethnic origin and personal circumstances, and they are responsible for guaranteeing the equal access to public services. And local responsibilities means that while the governments has to be for all citizens, politicians must to design for the common interest of all the citizens, equally seeking and tackling disadvantages of specific groups. And that also means that equal rights concerns Roma and not Roma. And Roma must also be responsible and co-responsible from their duties and acting as full citizens. Second idea coming from the summit is that we need to change attitudes and going in another way. And change attitudes concerns changing mentalities and approaches. And we need changing mentalities and approaches to going forward. And this is changing attitudes for non-Roma and also for Roma themselves. Changing attitudes means, first, believe that it's possible to change this situation and to overcome the current trends. And we need positive attitudes and positive expectations. Secondly, changing attitudes means that the Roma has to be approached as the rest of the citizens, as persons that have the rights and not have to be approached as a problem. And changing attitudes means that there is need awareness raising for the general public, for the media, and for the Roma themselves. And in fact, changing attitudes takes to another way of acting. And changing attitudes take for the local government to political commitment, to a long-term approach, to acting in a multidimensional level, to mainstreaming Roma issues in public policies and to compensate at the same time disadvantages that Roma suffer, and to foster the active Roma involvement, working with Roma and not for the Roma, and doing policies with the Roma and not for the Roma. Third idea from the Congress is that, from the summit, is that we need to bridge the gap between national policies and local implementation. What is happening today in Europe is that many countries are launching national strategies and national policies, and these national strategies and national policies need to have practical implementation at the grassroots level and need to take into account the local level. And the summit shows and insists that for filling this gap is need to involve the local and regional level from the beginning of the policies. That is in the planning process, in the implementing process, in the monitoring process, and in the evaluation policies. And the summit insists that it's important to build local and regional capacities and to give to the local level the adequate means and support, and to recognize that the local government is a key actor in the support and in the implementation of the national policies. And for national policies being effective, it is need to join force with the local level. The fourth idea related to the summit is concerning the three key areas that we're working in depth. In relation to the right to education, the key message is that education must be given the highest priority. And education is crucial for helping foster generational change and is the best tool for the future progress. And we need to remember that almost 50% of the Roma are under 25 years age. In relation to the fight prejudice and managing diversity, the key message is that local and regional authorities must protect the rights of the citizens and prevent them from being discriminated against. And fighting prejudice and stereotypes does not require funding alone. It requires awareness raising, requires trust building, and dialogue between Roma and not Roma. And local elected representatives must be constructive in their political discourse. Concerning equal access to services, including housing, healthcare, and employment, the key message is that the real challenge is to have a local level public services that are inclusive and flexible, and that is adapted to different populations. Not services for Roma, but services accessible to every people, including every citizen and Roma as citizens. And I go now to the proposal from the summit and the step forwards and the challenges. And for these proposals, the starting point is that it's time to move from policies to practices and to draw up policies from the practical experience on the ground and grassroots level. National and European policymakers must listen to the voice of experience of local level and take advantage of the well of experience that exists. The local level itself must be more proactive. During the summit, it was a clear demand from local representatives, and it was a demand to the Council of Europe and to the Congress of Local and Regional Authorities and the special representatives of the Council of Europe, Secretary General for Roma issues, to increase their active support of municipalities in their goals and tasks for Roma inclusion. This demand from the cities is coming together with the willingness and the proposals for several cities that are ready to support this process and to be engaged in this process. And the concrete proposals is to launch a European Alliance of Cities and Regions for Roma Inclusion. And this Alliance for Cities and Regions of Roma Inclusion is for framing and supporting better cooperation, sharing good practices, strengthening the local and regional capacities, identifying specific problems and goals, proposing solutions, and helping to ensure that funding for Roma activities arrives to the grassroots level. This alliance has to be focused at the local level and needs to be focused on the real problems that local authorities are dealing today on their daily basis. The Alliance must create synergies at different levels, and if I have to finish with a global feeling from the summit, participants in the summit, they feel that the summit was not an ending point, but was a starting point, and the process must begin, and it is needed to follow this momentum, and it is needed to follow political will to active engagement from the local level. And that means political support, active means, including resources, and an agenda for launching this initiative as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia, for your inspiring intervention. And I just say one line I noted from your intervention was that it's time for us to move from policies to practices. I think that's a telling statement, and it should make us all look up. But thank you very much for that intervention. Now, I'm particularly pleased now to welcome and introduce the 4 winners of the 3rd edition of the Dosta Congress Prize, 3 cities and 1 region. This prize was established in 2007 following the broader Council of Europe Dosta campaign, rewards territorial authorities which distinguish themselves for their participatory and innovative work in combating anti-Gypsyism and promoting the inclusion of Roma in political and social life. Later in the afternoon, as the co-chair of the jury, I will have the honour to award this prize to the 4 winners. The city of Scala in Finland and the municipality of Surcin in the city of Belgrade in Serbia, which have won the joint first prize. Southern Council in Greater London, UK, which has won the second prize, and Comunidad de Madrid in Spain, which has won the 3rd prize. They've all carried out outstanding projects in favour of their Roma population, which were duly acknowledged and appreciated by the jury. We all look forward to learning about these examples of good practice at local level as part of our debate today. I now invite the representatives of the Dosta Congress Prize winners to tell us about their work and in particular their winning projects. On behalf of the city of Jyväskylä in Finland, I welcome Ritva Antonen and Kosti Floren from Finland. Sorry about the pronunciation, but I made the sentiments speak for themselves. So you take the floor, please.
Dear Mr. President and the members of the Congress, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the prize. We are very happy of this Dosta Congress Prize awarded to the city of Jyväskylä in Finland for the work done in promoting Roma inclusion on local level. We wouldn't have gained these results without a project called the Roma into Working Life. And we would not have had the project if there had not been Roma working group established in 2003 by the city government of Jyväskylä. The initiative for that became from the Regional Advisory Board on Romani Affairs of Southwestern Finland. Roma in the Working Life project was implemented within the community initiative Equal program, combating racism and xenophobia in the labour market and funded by European Social Fund from 2004 to 2007. The purpose of the project was to improve the employment opportunities of Roma by raising the level of education, by supporting them to employment and entrepreneurship, and by working with attitudes. The success factor of the project was the Roma mediators, who supported the Roma and mediated in schooling, education, working life, and in prevention of drug abuses. There are about 500 Roma in Jyväskylä area. During the project, there were made over 100 personal plans to education or employment for Roma participants. 85 of them got job or work practice place. 50 of them went forward to education, and 3 of them set up small business. There can also be seen other impacts of the project now. The municipal Roma service of City of Jyväskylä is carrying on the good practices of the project. Every Roma child in proper age participate to at preschool and primary school, and there are no more dropouts like earlier. Almost every Roma will proceed to the future education after the primary school. Roma workers as a good model in working places have changed the attitudes of many non-Roma people. Turom training is still running in different parts of Finland, and there are interests in Turom also in other European countries like in Belgium. At the same time, there was also done a doctoral thesis on Roma entrepreneurs in Finland in University of Jyväskylä. Almost all entrepreneurs had experienced prejudice and discrimination, but they were positive, for they were not in the margin of the society. So entrepreneurship could be one way for Roma to integrate themselves. And now I will give the floor to Kyösti Florin. He is the developer of the Turom training. What is the most innovative product of our project? Thank you.
Thank you. You have the floor.
Turom, this is a language of the Roma and means you Roma, human and person. Turom support for the Roma training program was initiated during 2001 and 2003 on the further training course of mental health care at Jyväskylä University of Applied Science. Turom training program has then later on been adopted as a product of the Roma in the Working Life project 2005 and 2008, and it has been further developed as an example of successful mutual integration. Turom support for the Roma training program aims on its part to answer a basic problem of the Roma and the majority. There exists a social gap between the Roma and non-Roma that has lasted for hundreds of years, and it becomes apparent in, for example, when the Roma are trying to get into education, employment, or into social life. The aim of the Roma training program is to integrate the Roma into the community by building a bridge, especially on this gap. The aim of the Roma training program is that the members of the Roma and majority could build and cross over the bridge between the two cultures and get to know each other as human beings with the help of the full Roma training program. Two targets of Roma training programs are, first, to guide the Roma to find their own strengths and then support another Roma. And second one is to lay foundation for the cooperation between the Roma and the non-Roma. I'm very gratitude for the city of Jyväskylä and the project of Roma in the working life about the mutual cooperation and possibility to develop and put to practice the Roma training programs with different audiences.
Well, thank you, Mr. Florin, and also thank you very much, Mrs. Antonin. Your very inspiring contributions, and we value everything you said. We've taken it to heart. Now, I now welcome the Mayor of Surshin, Mr. Vladislav Janosvek, and Mr. Kemal Sejinlovsky. Honoured guests, you have the floor. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen. One word describes best all the work we are trying to do for 2,000 Romani people in Surcin, municipality of 50,000 citizens. Encouragement. Also, we can use one word to describe the way we are achieving it: sincerity. Our common life is based on our awareness of equal birth, living and dying rights. We believe that a significant number of poor people is not to blame for their poverty, especially the children. When we talk about Romani people, it immediately implies poverty, because humanity suffers from poverty that is inherited birth. And we know that poverty is incurable, but differences between us must be smaller. If we raise our awareness, we will cure our conscience. If enough of us finds kindness within, world will be saved. No one is born without love, and therefore everyone has a duty to spread it. This is not poetry, it is a warning. In a practical sense, we support them in health, care, education and employment, in social and cultural life, sport and religion, and in preserving Romani people tradition. For Romani people who practice their religion in secret in their private houses, we built an adequate, well-made prayer house. for the burial ceremony and bathing of deceased, which was earlier performed in the open, we built appropriate premises with necessary equipment. In Vrtlarska Street in Surčin, we sanitize a garbage depot, and on that spot built an open playground for children. For the largest Romani association, we constructed a building with offices, kitchen, sanitary facilities, and a hall for their social activities, education, art, and celebration. Municipality committee headed by a construction engineer observed Romani houses under construction, and for amount from 500 up to 1,500 euros, we supply construction material and finance construction workers so that more houses have bathrooms and become more comfortable and look better. Municipality of Surčin has been carrying out the project named Uprising of Humanity for almost 5 years now. Approximately 150 poor, mostly Romani families without any financial means and without family members capable of work are receiving the amount between 2,000 and 5,000 dinars on a monthly basis from our municipality. For 142 Romani family, we are providing meals in a public kitchen. We also provide scholarships for Romani pupils and students. All Romani pupils are supplied with school books free of charge. Romani have 2 representatives in the local assembly of Surčin. 30 Romani are employed in public communal service of Surčin. We are financing printing of Romani magazine Romano Lil. Local TV station Surčin is covering all events related to Romani community. Everything that it evoked an enthusiasm and goodwill of the Romani and brought us together to your attention. From the 5th of October 2000, Serbia is a country of perhaps slow and tough but unavoidable renaissance. While obeying international rules, we are trying to find our place in the world to sports, culture, humanistic politics, and economy. In the name of the Republic of Serbia, its capital Belgrade and municipality of Surčin, we express our deep gratitude to Congress of local and regional authorities of the Council of Europe for honoring us together with respect municipalities of Finland, Great Britain and Spain with this valuable Dosta prize. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now I call Mr. Kemal Sajinlavski.
Gospodine predsjedniče, dame i gospodo, ipak bih želio da se lično zahvalim ovom kongresu za pokretanje nagrada opštinama u kampanji Dosta. Pošto mogu da govorim samo na srpskom, Moj govor na englesko čitat će gospođa Mirjana.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank this Congress for initiating awards to municipalities within the Dosta campaign in order to strengthen the role of local and regional authorities of Europe in the field of enhancing the rights of Roma and other minorities. Since I can speak only in Serbian, my speech will be read in English by Mrs. Marijana, which is me. This award brings us more will to endure in our efforts, but also a great responsibility, which we'll have to justify to our people and to you. We will work together even better, faster and more efficient in order to improve the life of the Roma community in the municipality of Surčin. I wish to thank my colleagues and members from the Association of Roma Surčin for cooperation and help in achieving such a high place in the Dosta campaign. Activities of our association became the main drive of change in the Roma community, which not only solves the problems of Roma, but also affects the quality of life and changes the social climate in our municipality, which the citizens of the Roma community certainly notice. The help of the local authority, particularly the mayor Vojislav Janošević, was crucial. Mr. Janošević showed exceptional understanding and sense for the problems of his fellow Roma citizens. His support and activity influenced the work of our association, but also brought well-being to the entire local community. Our mayor's example may serve other local leaders in Serbia and beyond. Once again, I thank you all.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to say before I go to the next speaker, 3 or 4 years ago I was monitoring a local election in Serbia, and at that stage I could see the efforts that you were making to improve democracy, and I still talk about it back in my own country as an example of the efforts that you were making, so I just say well done. Now, my next speaker is Mike Smith, lovely name, an easy name for me, from the United Kingdom, and he's here on behalf of Southwark Council. In actual fact, my mother went to school in Southwark. So you have the floor, Mr. Smith.
Well, thank you very much. And it's with great pleasure that Southwark Council accepts this Dosta Award this year. And we'd like to thank all of those who have recognised the work that the Council does to support the Gypsy, Roma and Traveller community. Southwark Council has a long tradition of supporting and working with this community. Our investment in sites, and we've got the largest number of caravans in the whole of the Greater London area, is the cornerstone of the Council's work. I know that our councillors are really sorry that they were not able to come in person to accept the prize. However, the success of the Gypsy Roma Traveller community in the borough owes a great deal to the political leadership offered by the Council. The sites themselves are obviously a testimony to that political leadership, and senior members have been prominent in both championing and celebrating the Gypsy Roma Traveller community. Our Mayor led the celebrations for Gypsy Roma Traveller History Month, which is an important monthly event in Southwark, a yearly event. The leader and the lead member for children ensure that Gypsy Roma Traveller issues are recognised in our corporate policies, and one of our local members has been prominent both nationally and locally in promoting travellers' rights. The corporate commitment to work with Gypsy Roma Traveller the community is also demonstrated by the support we give to the Southwark Travellers Action Group. This focuses on integration and community cohesion, as well as offering advocacy, advice and training for members of the community. The Council also provided funding to enable the production of DVDs which celebrate the culture and achievements of the Gypsy, Roma and Traveller community, one of which was submitted in support of our application for this award. At the heart of our attempts to improve the lives of Gypsy Roma Traveller community is access to services, and in particular health and education. At this time of unprecedented cuts in public expenditure, and in the UK local authorities have been particularly hard hit by cuts, it's extremely important that access to services is focused on encouraging the use of universal service providers, particularly general practitioners in health and schools in education. Clearly, the establishment of some stability around sites is important in facilitating access to universal services, and it also helps to raise the social status. Within children's services, which is where I work, our strong focus is on school attendance. We know that young people stand little chance of academic success if they are not in school. We also know that changes in school are closely correlated with lower academic scores. And research in the United Kingdom on impact of the change of school demonstrates that for every change of school, children and young people get lower scores. Having stability in sites increases the chances of us supporting young people into schools and in helping schools to get to know and understand the needs of the community they serve. But there's no point in getting these young people into school if the experience they get is neither relevant nor enhancing. The schools in Southwark, especially at secondary phase, have shown that they can not just accommodate Gypsy Roma Traveller young people, but they can provide an experience that is both inspirational and aspirational. The story of Joe Harper, who appeared on the DVD, illustrates just this. Here's a young person whose education was not without its challenges. He was out of school for a whole year. But thanks to his work and that of his school, he came out of secondary education with 10 top-grade GCSEs, and he's gone on since to even greater success. And throughout this, he has stayed true to his culture and to his heritage. Joe is a great role model for Gypsy Roma Traveller achievement, but his story remains all too rare. And it's because of this that Southwark will continue to support the Gypsy Roma Traveller community by both celebrating the culture with our support for the Southwark Travellers Action Group and for the Gypsy Roma Traveller History Month, and by maintaining our commitment to helping the Gypsy Roma Traveller community to access universal service provision, which, despite the current austerity measures, continue to receive public investment in the UK. So thank you again from Southwark Council for the award, and we look forward to celebrating more successes for the Gypsy Roma Traveller community in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Now, finally, on behalf of the Comunidad in Madrid, I welcome Mr. Diego Garcia, who is the representative in Brussels of the Comunidad de Madrid, and he is here. Mr. Garcia, you have the floor with pleasure.
Muchas gracias, Presidente. Muy buenas tardes.
Thank you very much indeed, President. Very good afternoon to you all. First of all, I would like, on behalf of the President of the Community of Madrid and on my own behalf, our sincere gratitude for your recognition of the work that we have done in the Institute for Rehousing and Social Integration. You have signalled this with the award of the Dosta Prize that I am here to receive today. For many years, we have sought to eliminate all manifestations of exclusion and also to fully integrate the most needy groups in society into the mainstream. The IRIS Institute came about in order to dismantle shanty towns and to provide decent housing to the families living in these neighbourhoods, most of whom are Roma people. Since it was set up in 1998, we have considerably reduced the phenomenon of shanty towns, and if our organisation didn't exist, then there would be over 10,000 shanties in the Greater Madrid area. We have provided decent housing for more than 2,000 families, which means that 8,000 people have ceased to live in shanty towns in conditions of social marginalisation, and we have been able to integrate into society as fully fledged citizens. Our model is that we rehouse these families in high-rise blocks, as we believe that is the only way forward to integration. Because, according to our research, if gypsy shanty dwellers are housed in exclusive neighbourhoods, then the outcome is not successful. It's very difficult for them to integrate in society if they are geographically separate from society. Because while social integration is based on intermingling, on togetherness and equality, if we have these separate neighbourhoods and designated settlements, then that actually creates quite the opposite outcome. Tackling social exclusion is predicated on framing public policies which can foster inclusion. That is why IRIS has a political agenda, namely to eliminate all of the shantytown neighbourhoods, as we believe that that is the way to integrate these groups into society. They can live in family groups, but in different settings. We also provide different kinds of support: social support, educational support, and employment support. IRIS is also providing support to the 2,412 shanty dwelling families who have been rehoused, and that support extends to 9,300 individuals, of which over 3,000 are under the age of 16. We have also used our employment program to find work for 6,000 of these people. And thanks to our organization's efforts, we have been able to bring many of the children into the educational mainstream. We have an enrollment rate of 91% of children of compulsory schooling age. And that is why 95% of the rehoused families have been successfully socially integrated. Through IRIS, in 2008, we launched a pilot program which was designed to set up a local assistance service in the Madrid community. The idea is to promote community solutions to problems and to promote integration through community development projects. In that same year, in 2008, we also instituted a new service. This new unit is there to detect the emergence of any new shanty towns. We believe that we have been successful. We have a budget of over €300,000, and over 13 years of existence, we've been able to link the issues of housing and social integration, which means that different individuals and groups are interrelated, that we respect people's rights and tolerance, and ultimately that we foster equality of opportunity and shared rights and duties. We work as a network, and we operate according to the principles of transparency, effectiveness and responsibility, and also a desire to be of service to all people of Madrid. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Garcia. Now, having listened, the four of you can be proud of your achievements, the four cities. Certainly, you've raised the bar extremely high for others to catch up on you and get that prize next year. So I just say well done to all of you for your interesting contributions, and congratulations once again. I now wish to open the debate to the floor, and I call on Mrs. Koeman-Ashik of the Netherlands. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At first, I like to underline the problems several countries do experience with the inclusion of the Roma people. And I'd like to support the initiatives taken by the Summit of Mayors by Roma. Having said that, I would like to highlight another side of the topic that we are discussing here today, regarding the way that we are approaching this issue in the Netherlands. Our country has moved away from developing direct target group approaches, as it is of the opinion that these groups are represented in national general policy. Therefore, our country will not develop a national Roma strategy. Whether or not that's a good thing is hard to tell. But what we do see is that our municipalities consider the problems with the Roma more along the lines of safety and criminality, and are not being dealt with along the lines of discrimination or human rights, as we are discussing here today. As I indicated before, within our association we have a platform of municipalities with Roma communities. Years ago, these have moved away from the so-called soft approach and developed a new approach to give perspective to the Roma population. Various municipalities with Roma communities have been involved in educational projects for Roma. The results are still not very impressive, but they are being considered as good steps in the right direction, and longer-term investments are needed in order to achieve concrete and sustainable results. It's important to mention in this regard the diversity of Roma populations. The document states that Roma representatives are not sufficiently involved in policy making or in activities to represent this group. However, it's very difficult to find this representation, given that Roma populations hardly want to be represented by a person or an organization, given their variety and different backgrounds. What I would like to make clear is that it would be important that we should make sure to also reflect the own responsibility of the Roma, and that we should avoid talking about criminal activities that they may be involved in. The report that's being presented for adoption today focuses very much on the victim role of the Roma. I just want to make sure that we don't lose out of sight that the part of the discussion we have in our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now I call on Mrs. Lily Pool from Finland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dear colleagues, as we all know, at the moment the situation of Roma is the most serious and largest question of internal discrimination in Europe. In this perspective, I'm very pleased to notice our Congress is taking this issue determinedly. This question deserves all our attention and collaboration between different authorities, agencies and communities of all levels. I want to congratulate the Rapporteur, Mr. WARMISHAM, and the expert, Dr. Oakley, for their excellent work. Of all European institutions, the Council of Europe has been the precursor in tackling Roma questions. My country, Finland, has a vision to be the European forerunner in Roma issues by 2017. I would like to challenge, in fact, all countries here present to compete with positive spirit. Who organises the best way? Roma questions, the life of Roma people. Because in some parts of Europe, the Roma situation is desperate, and the need of immediate measures to help these people is really urgent. Then, generally speaking, and referring to Roma living, for example, permanently in Finland, the discrimination can be either open or hidden. The fact that Roma are overrepresented in prisons, on premature retirements, and are less educated than non-Roma persons are all evidences of social exclusion and discrimination. Without any doubt, the children's schooling is of capital importance. But I would still like to emphasise the importance of adult education of Romas, which was not so evident in the report or experts' document. In tackling the problem of unemployment and migration, the lifelong learning and adult education has a crucial role. And I cannot underline too much the fact that each country must carry its responsibility for its citizens. The poverty is not a product of export to the streets of another country. But, on the other hand, poverty is not a crime, and if it makes people move, then we should accept this and carry the responsibility together across Europe. In fact, both the report and the experts' document give enough attention to cross-border collaboration, including projects and dissemination of good practices. Finally, once again, thank you and congratulations for this most important report and document. And especially congratulations to Dosta awarded projects from different countries. May all this be a good start for better human rights situation and living together in dignity in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Villipol. I now call Mr. Tamilos from Greece.
Can we ask 3 minutes?
3 minutes. Hey, you have 3 minutes, Mr. Tamilos.
Thank you very much. Αγαπητέ κύριε Πρόεδρε, αγαπητοί συνάδελφοι,
President, colleagues,
επιθυμώ να εκφράσω την ικανοποίησή μου
I'm
για την προσπάθεια που καταβάλει το Κογκρέσο.
very pleased with the efforts carried out by the Congress to help the Roma, who are among the most vulnerable citizens. Over 7 years, in fact, for over 7 years I was the president of a network of Greek cities and towns, which of course had Roma as residents, and I'm certainly delighted with the progress that has been made right up to now. We cooperated very closely with the national bodies to help Roma communities ensure they had local and national representation. And as things stand today, we now have Roma candidates in county council elections and also in the legislative or general elections. Of course, when it comes to tackling this subject, it's of vital importance for the local and regional authorities to play a role here. And this is why we need to continue to ensure that all local stakeholders are made fully aware of what's at stake. We must also be aware of the fact that some local stakeholders are not in favour of Roma integration. Sometimes we come up against this attitude. And this situation is exacerbated by the, of course, importance of respecting human rights and dignity. And a network of towns and municipalities is going to be created to promote this particular question and to try and show that it is possible to integrate Roma in societies. With the help of Roma specialists in the context of this network, and these are experts from the Roma communities, we will be in a position to encourage the Roma communities to take on or assimilate the democratic rules within our society, to ensure that they demand that they have a fully fledged part in the democratic process in the towns and cities where they live. Quite clearly, with regard to the summit of the mayors on the Roma that was held recently in Strasbourg, this was an initiative that we can highly welcome, and the initiatives that have been taken here can be commended, but this only, in fact, concerns communities that want to do something in favour of integrating the Roma. But what should we do for municipalities and towns and cities and countries that, from the looks of things, aren't all that interested in taking any action here to help the integration of the Roma? So can I suggest that the Congress and the Rapporteur, with regard to Article 9, and in parallel with the proposal to organise European cities to integrate the Roma, so can I suggest that we ask the national delegations once again to organise national networks of towns and regions which would ensure that work be carried out to help municipalities that are facing all the different challenges in terms of Roma integration. Thank you very much.
You got your point across. Now, before I call the next speaker, I'd like to remind you all that given the pressure of time, you should speak for no more than 3 minutes. That's not my fault, it's the pressure on time. And my next speaker is Mr. Pellegrini.
Grazie, Presidente.
Thank you very much, President. I think that in tackling this issue, and in looking specifically at the plight of Roma, the Congress is really seeking to defend human rights. Now, for about 20 years or more, we have been trying to mobilize local authorities and raise awareness of their relations with the Roma. It's not been easy because there's a huge amount of apathy as well as a large degree of opposition. Roma often live in social deprivation, which is attributable to a whole host of different factors. But of course, these groups have to be housed, but that in itself is not enough to tackle the issue, because it's important, I think, not simply to look at short-term needs, but to look also to the medium and long-term. So let's not just address the, on occasion, dramatic living conditions of Roma people. Let's look to the future. I think that we need to have more cooperation between local authorities and the communities concerned, because clearly we need to listen to them and find out what they want, what they need. I grant you that housing is extremely important, but there are a lot of mobile camps these days, but that has become a luxury. I think it's become virtually impossible for people to live exactly where they want. So this has become a social issue, and you find a lot of Roma in villages, at village festivals. They bring art, culture, music and trade. So we need to look at the link between handicrafts and commerce. We need to look at low-quality industrial products which are produced, and I really don't know to what extent the Roma heritage, the Roma labour heritage, is salvageable. I think that that is in the past, and so it's important that we look at their notion of integration. Now, I think that we all have the spirit of the nomad within us. It's something which is mythical, but it's something perhaps that's been driven out by years of civilization. But the desire to move around, the desire to live as a nomad is not something that is to be viewed as a defect. Rather, it is part and parcel of being a member of the Roma community, and the kind of hatred which is directed to this group really is shameful, because we have these kinds of attitudes to people living in socially deprived conditions. There are about 12 million scattered around, so they are a scattered nation, and without our assistance they will not make any progress. They need us.
You made your point. Now, my next speaker is Mr. Helinka.
Thank you, dear Mr. President, dear colleagues. I am the mayor of one of the urban part of the second biggest city in Slovakia, Košice South. I am sure that local and regional level, either separately or together, can use their power and develop actions for the purpose of creating the conditions for education of the disadvantaged groups of pupils, including Roma group. In our urban part is located the secondary vocational professional school founded by the Košice regional self-government, which besides the ordinary secondary education and training of pupils provides also 2-year field of study to pupils coming from social disadvantaged environment. This education allows them to complete their primary education and to specialize them in the field of textile clothing for girls and of building production for boys. 2-year field of study for this group of pupils is provided in 3 remote branches of the secondary vocational school, which were established in localities with the highest concentration of Roma community within the Košice region. The attendance of pupils is motivated by the scholarship for reached good results. Scholarships are coming from the state budget. Last year was paid the scholarship to 71 pupils in amount of 47,000 euros. In the last year, entered into 2-year field of study 72 pupils, 29 of entered in the 2nd class and 24 of them completed their education. This form of study allows to pupils complete their primary education with the possibility to continue in the study at the secondary vocational school. After completing 2-year education, the pupils are more able to cooperate with other people to adapt to changing social and working conditions. They absorb new knowledge. They are more able of self-realization and are perceived as qualified workforce for the labor market.
Thank you, Mr. Elinka. Now, my last speaker from the floor is Mr. Varentia.
Thank you, President. I took part in the conference on the 22nd of September, the Summit of Mayors on the Roma, and I very much appreciated the Congress's efforts to include this very thorny issue on its political agenda. It's an issue that has affected many communities in Italy. A lot of towns and cities and small, medium-sized and large local authorities have been affected. So this is indeed an important issue. But the point I wanted to make was that essentially what we're talking about is respect for human beings and respect for human rights. But at the same time, we need to take account of the need to abide by the law. Local authorities are in dire financial straits, and it's very difficult for them, therefore, to necessarily respond to all these demands. We have the Roma's needs for education, training and access to employment. Just a few months ago in Italy, a few European journalists accused the country of not being concerned enough with this issue, but we had a law in Italy which was designed to provide support for traveller children, Roma children who are in compulsory schooling. So I can assure you that some years ago now, Italy started providing this kind of support in terms of Roma education, and in a lot of our communities we have been at pains to recruit and train mediators. I think that this is an important addition to the work that is being done by the Rapporteur, and certainly another point which was made at the summit of mayors on Roma is the fact that we need a European policy to manage this phenomenon. Of course, we want the phenomenon to be tolerated, and of course human rights must be observed, but at the same time, it's important that we ensure that all citizens in our community are safe and live in security.
Mr. Ferencia. Now, that concludes the list of speakers. Now, Mr. WARMISHAM, would you like to respond? Because of the time the speakers took, I have to limit you to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President. What I would say is thank you for colleagues for taking part in this debate and raising some issues and sharing your experiences. I think my colleague from the Netherlands raised local rather than national, and I think anything that we can do that's positive to actually support and work with the Roma, you know, we've got to accept and we've got to push forward. So, yeah, I can understand as long as something is happening. Good friend from Finland, challenge on the life of the Roma people and the raising of adult education. I think if you look at the report 312, it actually says there about employment and skills training, and also, you know, this is just an initial report. As we move on, we will be looking further and further in depth at issues. So I'm sure that adult education will come around. Again, my colleague from Greece, great to hear about the democratic process that's going on and Roma standing for election. I also think it is that talking about national networks, I think if you look at point H on page 610, the mention of national networks is actually there. So, you know, that's been taken on board. Again, other people about education and experience, mediators, and about a Euro policy. You know, we're hoping that's what we're going to try and do through this report. And obviously in the next few minutes you're going to have to put up with me going through a number of amendments. So I'll leave it at that, Mr. President, and thanks for people taking part in the debate.
Thank you very much, Mr. WARMISHAM. Now, we'll now proceed. That concludes the debate.